Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. I believe the last video I did about my meat rabbit colony was the first morning chores of the bigger new colony. We had a smaller colony, but then we remodeled it to make it much bigger, and we did morning chores in that new one, and I filmed about it. But that was quite some time ago, and many different things have happened since then. So in this video, I'm going to attempt to cover shortly and succinctly everything that happened while still giving you as much detail as you need to learn from our mistakes and to just follow along with our story. So the first interesting thing that happened a few days after we moved everyone into the colony was we had our first escapee. We had one little baby black bunny escape. He was like 3 or 4 weeks old, very young. We had not had a chance to build up our deep bedding system yet, so he was able to escape under kind of in between the wall of the barn and the floor. There's a little gap, or at least there was before we added more bedding on top. And we had covered it with 2x4 fencing wire, but the little baby was still able to squeeze through. So we blocked up that one place he squeezed out of, but we weren't able to catch him. And then we caught him and put him back in the colony, but then he found another spot to escape from. That was the same thing, just like, in between the wall and the floor of the barn. And then I think one other bunny saw what he was doing and escaped too, and we caught them again and put him back. And then over the next few days, he would keep finding tiny spaces to escape from, and we'd block off that part, and then he'd find a different spot until we were finally able to block off everything, and no other rabbits escaped except for that one time. But all the rest of the time, it was just this one escapee kit. So he'd escape, and then we wouldn't be able to catch him for a few days, then we'd finally catch him and put him back in, and then block up everything. We're like, for sure he can't escape this time, but then he would again. Then we'd catch him again after a few days, and then put him back in, and he'd find somewhere else to get out of. And he got pretty good at avoiding being caught, so he lived free range for quite a while, and then he disappeared, so I'm assuming a predator got him or he died or something. But thanks to him and all his valiant efforts of escape, we now have every single little nook and cranny that could possibly be gotten out of, all blocked up and protected in the new colony, so no other babies will be able to possibly escape, at least hopefully. But even though it was such a hassle and really hard, I really did expect this to happen. It's my experience that whenever you have a new colony built, it does take a few escapings and fixings to get everything just right, because rabbit proofing is really hard, especially when they squeeze out of such small spaces. And just for reference, most of the things I'm talking about have happened at the same time as each other, so every few days something else would happen. So it's not in chronological order, it's just organizing one story from another that all happened at the same time. And so far in this colony, we've had 3 holes dug. We had one that they dug the first day they were in here, and I was very surprised at how quickly they started getting to work. In the other colony, they weren't able to dig, and one really good thing about this one is that they are able to dig. So they actually made it very deep, but it rained and then it kind of flooded. Thankfully, there were no babies in there, but they kind of buried it back up and have really never used it since. I'm not sure if that's because it flooded and they're like, oh, this is no good, or if it's just some other reason, but they have discontinued using it. Then they dug a second burrow that one time kind of filled up a little bit with water, but that was only when it was super rainy and there were flood warnings all around us. And I have a suspicion that Dasha has given birth in the burrow. I saw her nesting and pulling fur. I saw her going into the second burrow and making it bigger. And it's been covered for a while now. So I don't really know what's going on with that, but there could be babies in there from Dasha, her first litter. There could not be. It could be some other doe. I have no idea. In addition to the first burrow, the second burrow is right by this really big door. So whenever it rains, it gets wet there. Everywhere else in the colony is very protected from rain and stuff, so it's very unlikely that it'll flood, except for this one area where they seem to love to dig, because the rain can kind of blow through the window and soak into the ground all over here where they have burrows. And they have begun a third burrow a while ago. No one's ever enlarged it. It's kind of just like a small divot in the ground that gets covered with bedding sometimes, and I trip in it. I think part of the reason they're digging so much over here is that because of all the rain, the ground is nice and soft, whereas all the other dirt that's under the barn roof hasn't been rained on and is much harder to dig in. So we'll see how this plays out. It's possible I'll just have to add more wire over by the door so that they can't dig, or just bury up their burrows, or let them learn a hard lesson about it flooding. I've never really experienced burrows before, so I'm excited to learn all about it, even if we do make mistakes. But so far, no one has dug a burrow to escape. It's either been for fun, or for babies, or to stay cool, but there's been no escape burrows yet. We did have something from the outside try to dig in, though, or maybe it just collapsed. The end of the burrow was like right here, but they buried the front, so this was all kind of caved in. I don't know if it was natural, or if someone stepped on it, or a predator or animal tried to dig in. But thankfully, this part of the burrow was all covered up, and no one escaped, and I was able to fix it, so hopefully that never happens again. We have rocks blocking it and stuff, so it's very unlikely something will dig it up again. And we recently added another layer of bedding to our deep bedding system, so that's why it's really hard to see where people have been digging, because they buried it and stopped using it, and then bedding's been on top, so it's kind of hard to see. So far we had 2 minor problems that we had to fix that I expected and was completely ready for. But then we were slammed with a completely unexpected, huge problem that caused a lot of issues for us, but was actually pretty good in the long run. Our colony rabbits, as well as the rabbits in the pasture pen, got hit really bad with Pasteurella. So we ended up having to terminally cull a lot of our babies in the colony. But most of our breeders were just fine, except for Rinna, who had white snot, and we had to cull her. Everyone else had maybe a few sniffles with no white snot, or didn't have any problems at all. We are not entirely sure why we got hit with Pasteurella this spring. This is our first time ever having a really bad problem with it. Every once in a while we'll have a weak kit who is more susceptible to it than everyone else, and he shows symptoms, and we kill him. But for the most part, we have been unaffected by Pasteurella until now. My best guess is that it was a combination of things. We moved the rabbits into a new colony, which was stressful. We switched diets on them from grain to no grain at the same time. In addition to that, we also added a new rabbit to the colony, which added to the stress. And then at that same time, we had a really bad cold snap. We had nice springy weather. Then it got really cold and it snowed all of a sudden and then turned warm again. And then it was spring and there was pollen, and I've had really bad allergies, so that may have had something to do with it as well. But our current hypothesis is that all just the random things that occurred at the same time was just too much stress on many of these rabbits' bodies, and the stress caused their immune systems to weaken enough to show symptoms, and that is why we have many fewer rabbits in the colony than we did. But most thankfully, our buck is fine. He didn't have any sneezing at all. Most of our does didn't have any problems at all. I think Dasha and Zuzu were snuffling a little bit, but there were no signs of white snot, just maybe a few sniffles. Some of our kits didn't have any problems, so I know I can for sure keep those ones as breeders because they are nice and hardy and their immune systems work well. And even though that was a really big price to pay to find the hardy rabbits and make sure our breeders as well as babies we keep are hardy, I think in the end it will be well worth it as we raise hardy, healthy meat rabbits. So the Pasteurella problem went on for a while. Like, there'd be some rabbit sneezing, and then the next day there'd be another one, and then a few days would go by, another one would be sneezing, so it went on for quite some time. And it took a while, but eventually Rinna was the only breeder who we had to kill because she had white snot, but she had a litter of 2-week-old babies who were just old enough to come out of the nest box. So I weighed all my options, thought about all the pros and cons to everything I could do, and I decided that the best course of action I could take over the long run was to kill her anyways and let the babies be motherless in the colony at 2 weeks old and just see what happens. There have been many times where I've just let nature happen, and I've been super surprised how many rabbits survive something that I thought there was no way they could survive. There have been kits who are not getting enough to drink and are nearly dying, and then one day they're just super full and they do great for the rest of their lives. There have been kids who are super injured, and I'm sure it's going to get infected, but they heal just fine and go on to live perfectly happy lives. There have been kids I needed to wean super early, and I was sure they were going to die, but they lived just fine. And that was the case with some of these babies as well. They would steal short drinks from other mamas, not enough to hurt their own litters, but enough so they could stay alive. And they figured out how to eat solid foods very quickly. And while many of them did die, we have a few who are still living, which are a few more than I expected. I hoped that some of them would live, but I expected all of them to die. And though I'm tempted to keep those strong survivors as breeders, I don't want to because their mom was the only breeder who had Pasteurella, so I don't want to keep kits who have those bad genetics. So the Pasteurella problem had finally passed, and I was looking forward to having our hardy, nice rabbits living a normal, happy life again with no problems in this new time of rest and ease and good things happening. And then we started having kids die of coccidiosis. This is how it happened. But this morning we've had a lot of our grow outs, even the kind of older ones who have survived the Pasteurella and all of that randomly dying, and they look kind of skinny, like it's coccidiosis. But I've been staying on top of my bedding, making sure it's super clean all the time, so it's not that. But I've been noticing that whenever I feed them greens twice a day, the rabbits will sit in the greens, and then when I come refill them, there's like a little bit left over, but there's all these poop and pee all over it. So I think what's happening is the rabbits are pooping and peeing on the greens as they're eating them because they can get in the top, and then the leftovers that they eat later through the day have nasty stuff on them and they're eating them. For a while I thought they just wouldn't eat them because there was always a lot left over whenever it had poop and pee on it, so I thought they'd eat it until it was nasty and then they'd stop, but I guess that's not the case, and now we're suffering the consequences for not fixing this earlier. But that's okay. I'm glad we're having this problem and that we know exactly what's causing it, most likely. I mean, there's always a chance it's not what I think it is, but this is a very, very likely cause, so I'm going to assume this is the cause and fix it and then see if that helps. So as you can see right now, I took the lid from this nest box, which is empty, put it on top of here. It doesn't fit perfectly, but it kind of does. So that way the rabbits can eat through the sides, and then they can fit through this big hole. Fit through this big hole, but they won't be able to sit on the top and poop and pee. And then I'll feed greens this morning and then come check in the afternoon and see if that helped anything. If it didn't, I might have to build a new green feeder or figure out some other solution, but hopefully this solution works. It's pretty easy. I might have to find a new lid for this nest box, but that'll be very easy compared to building a whole new thing. Okay, it looks like my plan is working so far. I might need to put a brick or something on top of that lid because it's just set on there. It doesn't, attach. The one problem I might foresee is if the rabbits eat this down, because if they eat it down enough so they can fit through this big hole, then they can crawl in there and poop on the greens. But they have to eat it down a lot to do that, and I don't really think that'd be as much of a problem, nearly as much as it would if they're just starting from the top. Or I guess if they ate it down to like the first row of holes, there could be little babies crawling in there and pooping on it and peeing on it too. So that could be a problem, but it just as well could not be. So we're going to try this and see if it works, and if it continues to work, then great. If it doesn't work, and there keeps being lots of pee and poo on the greens, then I will figure something else out, and hopefully that works better. And I've been thinking about it, and I think I have decided to do Corid in their water. So I like to be a very hands-off rabbit raiser. If a rabbit gets sick, like for example with a Pasteurella, if they get sick, I don't treat them. I just kill them. And let the healthy ones and the hardy ones survive, and then they have babies and they're more hardy, so then we're improving our line of rabbits in the long term instead of treating the sick ones and letting them have babies and then making our rabbits sicker over time. But I'm thinking that because this is kind of my fault for not having a proper greens set up and letting them poop and pee on it, and it's not the rabbit's fault for getting sick with Pasteurella. I was doing everything right and they just got it, and the weak ones got it and the strong ones didn't. But for this one, I caused it by my not noticing there was a problem and giving them something that was a problem to begin with. So I'm going to treat them with Corid, and hopefully that helps. We do have apple cider vinegar in this water and none in this water. I think I'm gonna, I don't know, they drink this a ton. They love the apple cider vinegar, but they don't really drink any of the plain water. So if I put it in the plain water, they won't drink it. But I don't know if mixing it with apple cider vinegar will make it wrong or weird or something. So I might research that real quick before doing it. The funny thing is, I didn't notice anything amiss with any of these rabbits, like yesterday night, or yesterday at all, or no problems I noticed. Rabbits are prey animals, and so they don't show when they're sick, so it's very easy to miss something, and I guess I totally did that, but thankfully I've dealt with this before, and I know exactly what to do. I have the treatments ready, and I know what to expect. The first time I was dealing with coccidiosis, it was so hard, all the research and things that people say, and they contradict each other, and it was really difficult to figure out what the problem even was, and then we had to order something to treat them with. But this time, even though it's still sad, it's so much easier to diagnose and treat and cure, so I'm very happy for that. So we have had no more kits die since that first awful day. They are still showing symptoms, though the lid has helped. I decided not to mix the Corid and apple cider vinegar in the same dish, so we have the Corid water and the apple cider vinegar water, which both should help. And this afternoon I'm going to build them a new feeder, and hopefully it works just fine, so that there's no more poop or pee on the greens at all. And keeping the greens clean itself may just fix the problem, but we will continue to keep offering the apple cider vinegar water and the Corid water just in case. So hopefully we are able to get rid of this problem before it gets any worse. And the kids who have survived this long will continue to survive, and these will be great candidates for breeders since they have survived both the Pasteurella and the coccidiosis problems we've had this year. And thankfully, none of our breeders have died of cocci. And even though I would much prefer that this hadn't happened, I'm glad it did so we can rectify the problem, keep hardy rabbits, and have a better colony long-term overall. So that is the end of the update. Many things have happened all at the same time. It was hard for me to document it all because all these different things and different parts, and it was hard to explain, so I figured I'd just do one long video covering all that's happened. And now you can look forward to much more colony content in the future. Thanks for watching!